And joining us now on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Corey Lewandowski. Corey, former campaign manager, President Trump, and talks to the president now almost on a daily basis. He's at the White House, has lunch with them every week. And Corey, the author of 2 New York Times best-selling books, Let Trump Be Trump and Trump's Enemies. Get them. Easiest thing, go to my website, johnfredericksradio.com. You can buy them right there, either through Amazon. It'll either direct you to Amazon, or you can go through your favorite bookstore, right? Because it's all about you and your options. But you want to buy both of them. 2 best books written, one on the campaign, the other on the deep state and what is going on right now. And he's with us now, Corey Lewandowski. Great to have you back, Corey.
Good morning, John. Great to talk to you after seeing you last week at the Wall.
Let's start with that, Corey, and I want to thank you for going there. You know, I went there, and you have to be there to see it with your own eyes, see what can be done. What an event that was. And seeing that 2-mile wall and then talking to Border Patrol agents in what a difference it's made. It went from 1,000 illegal crossings a week to 0, and it's been done with private funding. And it's unbelievably successful, way under budget. What did you think of that whole thing?
You know, John, your listeners can't fully appreciate how difficult the task it was for those people to go in, engineer that, and build that. And they did it at one of the most important inflection points for illegal migration into our country, an area right between where New Mexico, Texas, and Mexico all meet, right at mile marker 1 right there. It was as you saw, John, a very, very high trafficked area before that wall went up. You could see the pathways walked through the areas. You saw the drug cartel members on the other side looking for opportunities to bring the coyotes through and their people through into the U.S. With that wall in place now, there is no more of this. It is so impressive, not just by the sheer size and scope of it. It has a 31% grade on the wall. And what that means to your listeners is, if you're a skier, that's like skiing down a black diamond mountain. That's how steep it is. That's what they did. They poured concrete 6 feet deep. They've got the best surveillance equipment, whether it's cameras so they can see what's going on. They can check if someone's trying to tunnel underneath it. It was so impressive. I couldn't appreciate it fully until I got there.
Right, and then you see it, and remember when the president, when you were there, when he came down the escalator in June of 2015, and he said, I'm going to build a big, beautiful wall. That was it. It's like, okay, that was what his vision is right there. And as you said, one of the areas that was most abused by the illegal traffickers and everything else, and it's gone down to 0 because it can be done, and they were building it for about 35% of the cost of what the government is building it for. And they got that whole, 1.5 miles done in 5 or 6 days. So an amazing story there. You have to go there to see it, right? I mean, like you said, it can't do you justice. What is the future of WeBuildAWall.us?
You know, John, after I saw it, I flew back on Friday afternoon. I spoke to the president on Saturday on 2 different occasions and told him what it was like to see that. And he knew instantly. He said, is that the wall that has the 5 feet of steel on the very top of it, so even if you get to the top, you can't climb over? I said, yes. He was so familiar with this. What he said was that is the future of where we're going, in addition to the work that his administration has done to repair significant portions of the wall. He wanted intimate details of what that wall looked like. He wanted to understand how it was designed, the construction of it, how long it took. And so I spent some time on the phone with him on Saturday talking through exactly what I heard while I was out there in New Mexico and in El Paso, Texas, about that wall. And look, he doubled down again on the phone with me to make the promise to the American people that he is going to build that wall on the southern border. We've started it. We're going to do more. There's going to be hundreds of miles of new construction of that wall built before this time next year. By the election time next year, that we'll have 400 or 500 miles of the wall built, and we will be doing and fulfilling the promise that he made, which is to make America safe from illegal immigration.
Corey, Supreme Court just overturned the stay of one of the circuit judges in the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco, allowing the administration to now take the money from the military fund that they wanted and put that towards the build a wall. When you say there's going to be 400 or 500 miles of new wall prior to 2020 election, is that where the bulk of that money is going to come from? Is that what your vision is and the president says now?
That's exactly right, John. And as you know, every time this president has tried to do something which he's constitutionally allowed to do, the federal judges have stepped in. One judge, usually in the Ninth Circuit or somewhere in a liberal institution, liberal location, has decided that they are more important than the laws of this land and have put stays. And we have seen this now time and time again, that the Supreme Court has had to step in and weigh in and say that those judges are wrong. Mm-hmm. And so the victory that the president received on Friday, which we all knew fundamentally he had the legal authority to do, which was to spend the money that he has control over to build the wall as an issue of national security, the Supreme Court sided with that. And now, what we've had is really just a delay because these activist judges believe that they don't want to see illegal immigration stopped. And my problem with that, John, is if you want to become a legislator, you should step off the bench, get away from being a judge, and go and run for office.
Right.
But these activist judges have determined in their own mind what they think is best for the country. They're not following the rules. And so we have delays in this, but the Supreme Court has stepped forward. That money is now flowing freely, and we're going to see that wall construction, not only the replacement, but the new sections being built very quickly.
As you go through this, and the president, obviously, when you talk to him, was excited about what has been done with WeBuildTheWall.us. And one of the things that Brian Kolfage said, who was the head of this, who started at triple amputee, is said that, look, we're not competing with the government for their wall. We want to come and fill in the areas that government can't get to on private property. And he said we're going to be like the special forces of the wall. Did you explain that to President Trump as well?
Yeah, I did, John, because what I explained to him was, look, the government already has, and he knew this already, has access to build that wall in a number of places. But what Brian and the We Build the Wall people have done is they went and acquired private land. That's the big difference here. They acquired private land. They're doing this all through private funds. And they found a very high traffic area. And what they told me when I was at the wall on Thursday and Friday of last week was there was a clear shot from where they started this on the New Mexico border all the way straight out to California. It's about 700 miles, I think they said. But look, you don't need a wall in every location. And the reason for that is because as they build this, what used to happen was the coyotes would take their people and they'd walk down these, mini mountains, these rock hills, and they could just walk right into the United States. Well, as they build this wall, they're now chipping away at that rock. So now there is a cliff, which is 30, 40, or 50 feet straight down. So there's no way to walk down anymore. And that's because the earth movers, the heavy equipment that they're using, the excavators, are making sure that even if there is not a wall there, you can't just walk around the wall now, because as soon as you do that, you've got a 50-foot straight down cliff that you'd have to somehow manage to get down if you wanted to get into the United States. And that's all part of it. And so the president understands that, what the private donors are doing is complementary to what the government is doing. It's not superseding. It's not replacing. It's complementary, and we need a holistic approach, and this is part of that approach. He completely understands that.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking Truth Across America. We're with Corey Lewandowski. Corey, former campaign manager for the president, talks to him on a regular basis. Just talked to him Saturday about this wall. So let's switch gears here a minute, Corey. Let's go to the spat with Elijah Cummings, the president being blasted over his tweet on Cummings, and yet you go back and you look at the disaster that is going on in West Baltimore, one of the worst cities in America, crime rampant. PBS did a documentary last year. They called it the Rat City of the number of rats there, the infestation they've had with just, the four-legged rats. I don't mean the two-legged ones in Washington in the swamp, but the four-legged ones. I mean, the city is that area is a complete catastrophe. There's been, the mayor had to resign, her chief of staff had to resign. There's been corruption forever. The president points this out and says, look, Elijah Cummings represents the area, hasn't done crap. Here's the results. And he's called a racist. What about fixing it?
Well, John, it goes back to the complete double standard that the media has when Donald Trump says something. When he calls out a city, and look, he's done this in Chicago. And by the way, John, he called out Lily White, where I live, New Hampshire, as a drug-infested den. Okay, do you remember that in the primaries?
Yep.
He said, and you know what? He was right. He was right because in the state of New Hampshire, we have a massive opiate crisis that we need to solve the problem. And in the city of Baltimore, they have massive problems. Their mayor had to resign because she had a sweetheart deal for some hospital or some nonprofit to buy all of her books to put money into her pocket. Basically, should have been indicted. There is rampant poverty, and so look, calling out cities like Chicago and Baltimore is not racism. It's a truth teller. And when other people did it, whether it was Bernie Sanders said it was like walking through a third world country, or when PBS highlights it, nobody criticizes those people. But when Donald Trump raises the issue, all of a sudden the mainstream media has to go to the lowest denominator, which is Donald Trump must be a racist. He must be a racist for saying the facts about specific cities, that there's high crime rate, that there's massive unemployment, that it's terrible that people have to live in abject poverty in a city like Baltimore, and that Elijah Cummings hasn't done enough to help those people. And you know what? It's amazing, John, because Donald Trump is always perceived as a racist, but he's the first president to help pass a criminal justice reform package, which has now helped release some 3,000 African Americans from jail, and he's fighting for the execution of a white supremacist to make sure that his Justice Department executes a white supremacist. So if he's a racist, he's doing a very bad job of it, just so we're clear.
I love that because, and isn't this getting boring, Corey? I mean, it doesn't matter what the president does now. If he attacks the policies of anybody that is not, I guess, a white male, he's accused of something, whether it's racist or sexist. Yet I remember during the campaign, I mean, he attacked or counterpunched Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, Ted Cruz. I mean, right down the line. He's also been very critical of the policies of Chuck Schumer and of Jerry Nadler and many, many others. Those are all white guys. So, I mean, I think he's just equal opportunity. If you hit him, he's going to hit back. And I don't think color matters to the guy. But it's just it's this rendition of Trump as a racist, regardless of what he says. Is it getting old and it's unfounded?
John, it gets really old, and what the Democrats want to do is they want to draw attention away from the real problems, that they've done nothing in the 6 or 7 months that they've controlled Congress to move the agenda forward. We saw yesterday that there was a massive upheaval at the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee because there was discussions that there weren't enough African Americans in leadership there, and the executive director of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the committee tasked with electing Democrats to the House of Representatives, was basically fired yesterday because of the outcry from the minorities who worked there saying that they weren't represented enough. That's not front page news today, John.
Right.
Look, that's a real story. The fact that the Democrats say one thing and do something different. Let me give you another great example. Bernie Sanders has said he wants to make sure everyone makes $15 an hour. Unless you work at his campaign, then you don't get to make $15 an hour, right, John? So, he says, well, it's do as I say, not as I do. And that's what the Democrats have done. And as I watch the morning news shows, I think the American people are just tired of it. I think you're exactly right. Hearing that Trump's a racist, they look at the economy is going great. But if you watch the television shows, you'd think we've got a 25% unemployment rate. You think that we're in a massive recession. You think that Donald Trump barely won the election. The fact is, he got over 300 electoral votes and destroyed Hillary Clinton. And now every prognosticator, once again, is saying Donald Trump can't win re-election because he's alienating all these people. I don't believe it because I don't think anybody's a single-issue voter. I think they look at the totality of what this president has been able to do for Homeland Security, economic security, and national security, and they're going to re-elect Donald Trump in a bigger margin of victory in the Electoral College than he received in 2016.
We both think he's going to win again, and only bigger. In their states he's going to be putting in play, like New Hampshire and Minnesota, that he lost very narrowly last time. So, look, I agree with you. We've had this conversation before. Corey Lewandowski, I think he's going to win everything he won in 2016. Add New Hampshire, add Minnesota. New Mexico is in play. Nevada is in play. Even Virginia is in play, oddly enough. Now we're getting resources there, so they're expanding the map. Let's get to the debates tonight and this week, especially this evening, where got a pretty big debate. Stakes are pretty high for Bernie Sanders now. He's slipping to Elizabeth Warren. She's in the middle of the stage. She's front and center, not him. They're competing in the same lane. Somebody's going to win New Hampshire, whoever does the other one's out. What do you look for tonight?
Tonight, I think you're going to see these candidates once again play to their base. I believe Elizabeth Warren is going to attack Bernie Sanders for his entire tenure in the U.S. Senate, and I think Bernie Sanders is going to have to come back and remind the Democrat voters that Elizabeth Warren only received the education she received and the job she received by lying about her status. And so you're going to have to see you're going to have to see much more aggressive nature between these front runners, because I believe, John, what you said cannot be overstated. If Bernie Sanders wins New Hampshire, Elizabeth Warren is out. If Elizabeth Warren wins New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders is out. Neither one of them are playing particularly well in Iowa nor in South Carolina. And so then after that, I think the race goes out to Nevada. And so, look, it's getting to the point now. The field is winnowing. I know you've got all these Castros and all these other guys who are in the race who really aren't factors. There's 4 or 5 real candidates in the race. And over the next 2 days, we're going to see Joe Biden be more aggressive. I think you're actually going to see Kamala Harris take a step back and not be as aggressive. She is already indicating that she's going to be polite and congenial, and she's going to then potentially portray herself as a victim of being attacked, even though her rate of incarceration as the Attorney General in the African-American community is very high. She's not going to want to talk about that, and I think you're going to see her try and play the victim over the next couple days.
Okay, I agree with that 100%. I don't think she can be as aggressive as she was, but everybody's going to be looking for Joe Biden to punch back in some regard. I'm not sure if he's going to do that either. But look, what we're going to get, Corey, in the next 2 days, the next 2 nights, is more liberal, left-wing, socialist nonsense. And one of the things that they're going to want to do is find a way to take the health insurance away from 220 million people. You know, one thing that the Democrats have really miscalculated here when they talk about private insurance, you know, there's also 20 million people that have insurance through their collective bargaining unions, right? That goes away. So if you're an auto worker, if you're an electrical part of the IBEW, if you're part of the teachers union, if you're any of these unions and you like your benefits, you like your insurance, under this plan, under Medicaid for All, that's gone. It's just not if you work on Wall Street or down the street at the Home Depot, right? That's all gone. 220 million Americans lose their insurance under this plan.
Look, Kamala Harris has been walking back since the last debate, her statement that she's going to take away private health insurance. She's now put out a new plan on this because she has to, because she's been roundly criticized. Joe Biden, I don't even think knew what it meant when he raised his hand. He looked around, so everyone else's hand was up and said, I guess I better do that also. And so, look, these guys should have been ready for prime time. They haven't been. And so they're in a very friendly environment, in my opinion, with the hosts. And I don't think you're going to see very aggressive questions. I think there'll be a few policy discussions, but I don't think you're going to see a lot of back and forth about real issues, because the mainstream media wants to continue this horse race for as long as they can because it's good for their ratings. And that's what these Democrats are going to want as well. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of breaking news over the next 2 days. But if Joe Biden doesn't get back on his horse and start to show that he's a leader in the Democratic Party, he may be out of this thing and end up as the 1% Joe that he's been the last 2 times he's run for president.
I don't know how Biden survives the next 3 debates, Corey. I really don't. He's going to be attacked by a host of people, and he's got no record really to defend. So it's going to be interesting. Both of us think that Bernie Sanders is still going to be the nominee. I'm still there, but I think Bernie has got to come out on offense tonight. I mean, when Bernie has gone on offense against other Democrats, he's successful. when he's let them play him, he doesn't get as much traction. So we'll see what happens tonight. Corey Lewandowski, final question. I've quoted you all over the news in saying that you think it's possible that when the investigation of the investigators winds its way up, that it's going to go up to the White House, maybe to Biden, maybe to Obama, but certainly to Powers, Rice, etc. Do you still hold that view?
I do, and I believe it more than ever. And I believe that Horowitz and Durham are getting closer than ever to bringing people to justice, long-needed people to justice for the crimes they committed. And we're going to see someone from the Obama administration go to jail. Not just James Comey, potentially Clapper or Brennan, but they were clearly being directed by a higher authority inside the White House. We know that there was unmasking going on by Susan Rice. We know that she unmasked more people than anybody else. And so I think that this entire investigation is going to lead to the highest levels of the government, and we're going to hold people accountable. And I wish the media would ask Joe Biden tonight what, if anything, he knew about the FISA applications, about the abuses of the system under his administration, because don't forget, John, in 2016, it was the Obama-Biden administration that failed to prevent Russia from interfering in our elections. It wasn't Donald Trump.
All right, Corey Lewandowski saying people that worked, somebody in the White House is going to jail. We're going to find that out soon enough. And I think the bad news is for these people, the longer Horowitz delays this, worse it is. Because if you have nothing, you're not delaying it. You're just getting it out and ending it. Seems to me that he keeps compiling information that leads him to somewhere else. And his review, the Inspector General, Corey, is being done silently in private, no media. Not the way Mueller's was with all these leaks. Remember, with Horowitz, there's been no leaks. Mueller, you had a leak a week, right? Because that was planned. You have no leaks, and it's just going to pop one day.
Criminal referrals are coming, and the people had better get their affairs in order, because I think Jim Comey is going to be criminally referred, as will many, many others, and it's going to be a day for righteousness in America.
John Fredericks Radio Network, we're done. Out of time. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us. Corey, always a pleasure. We'll see you soon. And we'll be right back here in the John Fredericks Radio Network.